Successful people aren't disciplined, not the way you think. They're not white-knuckling their way through mornings, forcing themselves out of bed, fighting themselves every hour of the day. They figured out something quieter than that. There are 7 rules they refuse to break, not because breaking them is hard, but because they've watched what happens to people who do. And it isn't loud. It's slow. Let me tell you what's actually at stake here. Because I don't want you to hear this as another list of things you should be doing. You already have enough of those. What I want you to understand is the cost of the next 5 years if nothing changes. 5 years is long enough for a person to become someone else entirely. 5 years ago, you were a different version of you, different worries, different weight on your shoulders, different things you thought would matter by now. And here you are. Some of what you hoped for happened. Most of it didn't. Not because you failed dramatically. Because the days kept arriving and you kept spending them the same way. That's the thing nobody warns you about. You don't lose your life in a single bad decision. You lose it in the accumulation of small permissions. One skipped promise to yourself. One more day of waiting until you feel ready. One evening where you told yourself you'd earned the right to do nothing, and you had, and it was fine. And then it happened again the next night, and the night after that, and somewhere in there it stopped being rest and started being a life. So here's the frame I want you to hold for the next 30 minutes. Think of your life as a plot of land, not a metaphor for something abstract, a real piece of ground you own and are responsible for. Every single day you either plant something on it, tend something growing on it, or you walk past and let the weather do whatever it wants. The land doesn't judge you. It doesn't send you warnings. It simply produces whatever you've allowed to grow there. And here's the cruel part. The part that traps people. The land looks the same at the end of a wasted day as it does at the end of a good one. You get no feedback. The soil doesn't turn red when you neglect it. It just quietly becomes what it's becoming. And one day you look out and either there's a harvest or there's a field of weeds you never remember planting. Nobody plants weeds. That's the part one needs you to sit with. Nobody chooses them. They arrive when nothing else was chosen. The 7 rules I'm about to give you are the rules of the people whose land produces. They are not complicated. Some of them will sound almost too simple, and I want you to be suspicious of that reaction, because the simplicity is exactly why most people dismiss them, and dismissing them is exactly why most people's land goes wild. Let's begin. 1. They keep their word to themselves before they keep it to anyone else. You are, right now, carrying a list of broken promises. Not to your boss, not to your family, to you. The workout you were going to start Monday, the call you were going to make, the habit you swore this time would stick. You've broken those promises so many times that you've stopped noticing the breaking. Here's what nobody tells you. Every one of those broken promises costs you something you can't easily rebuild. It costs you self-trust. And self-trust is the currency every other change is purchased with. Think about what happens when a friend cancels on you 3 times in a row. By the 4th invitation, you don't fully believe them. You make backup plans. You hold something back. You've adjusted. You've done the same thing to yourself. Some part of you has quietly stopped believing your own announcements. You say starting Monday I'm going to change my life, and there's a small, tired voice inside that has heard this before and doesn't even bother to get excited anymore. That voice isn't your enemy. That voice is accurate. It has the data. This is why motivation stops working for you. It's not that you lack willpower. It's that your internal credit score is shot. You've defaulted too many times, and now your own mind won't extend you the loan. So most people respond by making a bigger promise. They think the problem was ambition, that they weren't serious enough. So they announce something enormous. Full transformation. 6 days a week. Complete diet overhaul. New person by spring. And they last 9 days, and the default is bigger this time, and the credit score drops further. Here's the resolution, and it's going to feel insultingly small. Make one promise to yourself today that is so easy it's almost embarrassing. Not a goal. A promise. Something like, I will drink 1 glass of water before my coffee. I will make my bed. I will walk to the end of the street and back. Then keep it. Not for a week. Today. You're not building a habit. You're making a deposit. You are demonstrating to yourself, with evidence, that when you say a thing, the thing happens. Do that for a few days and something shifts that no amount of motivational content can produce. You start believing yourself again. And when you believe yourself, everything gets cheaper. The hard things stop requiring a mountain of psychological preparation, because you're no longer negotiating with someone who's lied to you. The people who never break this rule understand something the rest of us miss. They don't keep small promises because small promises matter. They keep them because they're maintaining the instrument they'll need for the big ones. But there's a catch, and it's the reason most people who understand this rule still fail. Because keeping your word to yourself requires you to know what your word actually is, and most people have never decided. Which brings us to the second rule. 2. They decide once, so they don't have to decide daily. Here's a question I want you to answer Answer honestly. How much of your mental energy goes to things you've already decided? You've decided you want to be healthier, but every day at noon you redecide. You stand there negotiating. Should I? Shouldn't I? Maybe just today. You've had this same argument with yourself 2,000 times and you're exhausted. And the exhaustion isn't from the discipline, it's from the arguing. This is the most expensive thing most people do and they never see it. They think willpower is a strength issue. It isn't. It's a scheduling issue. Every decision you make in a day pulls from the same limited reservoir. Doesn't matter if it's a big decision or a small one, what to wear, what to eat, whether to open that app, whether to say something in the meeting. By 4 in the afternoon that reservoir is dry. And that's exactly when the day tests you hardest. That's when you order the thing you didn't want. That's when you say yes to the plan you'll resent. That's when you scroll for 90 minutes you'll never see again. You didn't fail at 4 in the afternoon. You failed at 9 in the morning. By leaving too many decisions open. Most people try to solve this with more discipline, more force. They think if they were just stronger they'd win the argument at 4 o'clock. But you cannot outmuscle a system that's designed to drain you. You have to stop having the argument. Here's what to do today. Pick the 3 decisions you make most often and make them permanently. Not aspirationally. Concretely. Not I'll eat better. That's still a daily negotiation. Instead, I eat the same breakfast every weekday. Done. Removed from the board. Not I'll exercise more, that's a debate you'll lose. Instead, I move my body at 7 a.m. before I check my phone. Now it's not a choice, it's a sequence. The people who look effortlessly disciplined to you have simply removed most of their daily arguments. They're not stronger, they're carrying less. And notice what this buys you. All that reclaimed energy has to go somewhere. Suddenly you have capacity at 4 in the afternoon. Suddenly hard things feel possible in the evening, when they used to feel impossible. But here's where it gets interesting, and where this rule has a hidden edge most people never find. Because once you free up that energy, you face a problem you didn't have before. You have capacity, and no clear idea what deserves it. Which is the third rule, and the one people resist most. 3. They protect their attention like it's the last thing they own. Because it is. Everything you've ever accomplished came out of sustained attention on one thing. Every relationship that matters to you was built from hours of undivided presence. Every skill you have came from focus that lasted long enough to compound. And your attention is currently being sold. I don't say that to alarm you. I say it because I want you to understand the scale of what's happening. There are systems designed by extraordinarily intelligent people, tested against millions of humans, optimized relentlessly, whose entire purpose is to capture the hours of your life and convert them into someone else's revenue. You are not weak for losing to them. You are outnumbered. But understand what it costs. Attention isn't just time. Attention is where your life actually happens. When you're half present with your child, you're not spending less time with them, you're missing them. When you work distracted, you don't just work slower, you work shallower, and shallow work never compounds into mastery. Here's how most people fight this and fail. They try to resist in the moment. They keep the phone next to them and promise not to look. They keep 17 tabs open and promise to focus. They're relying on in-the-moment strength against an opponent that never gets tired. You'll lose. Every time. Not because you're weak, but because it's an unfair fight and you keep agreeing to it. The resolution isn't resistance, it's distance. Today, do this. Pick one 90-minute block. During that block, your phone goes in another room, not face down, not on silent, in another room, behind a closed door. No negotiation. And in that block, one thing only. The thing you've been avoiding. The thing that actually moves your life. 90 minutes. Once. Today. You'll notice something strange in the first 15 minutes. Discomfort. A pulling sensation, almost physical, a need to check something. That feeling is withdrawal. And I want you to recognize it for what it is. Because when you name it, it loses power. Sit in it. It passes. Around minute 20, something opens up. Thoughts start connecting that haven't connected in months. You remember what your own mind feels like when nothing is interrupting it. That feeling is not a productivity technique. That feeling is what being awake used to be. Now, the people who never break this rule guard those blocks the way other people guard money. They'll cancel plans for them. They schedule them first, before anything else touches the calendar. And here's the part that surprises people. They're not working more hours than you. Frequently they're working fewer. But their hours are whole, and yours are in fragments. And fragments don't add up to anything no matter how many you collect. Still, attention alone isn't enough. Because you can focus perfectly on the wrong thing for years. I've watched people do it. I've done it myself. Which brings us to a rule that will cost you something. 4. They say no far more than they say yes. You already know you should. That's not the hard part. The hard part is that every no has a face attached to it. It's not no to an abstraction. It's no to a friend who genuinely wants to see you. No to a coworker who'll be disappointed. No to your mother. No to an opportunity that might have been the one. Every no costs something real. and that's why you keep saying yes. Here's the honest math nobody puts in front of you. Your yes has already been spent. You have, roughly, 4 to 6 genuinely productive hours in a day. Not 16. 4 to 6. Everything you say yes to is subtracted from a pool that was already small. So when you say yes to something you don't care about, you're not being generous. You're taking from something you do care about and giving it away. The person you're stealing from isn't in the room. It's the version of you who was counting on those hours. Most people fail here because they think of no as a rejection. It isn't. It's an allocation. And they also fail because they wait until the moment of asking to decide, at which point the pressure is on, someone's face is in front of them, and the yes comes out before the brain catches up. So here's how you actually do this. Decide in advance what you're saying yes to. Write down the 3 things that genuinely matter to you this season of your life. 3, not 10. Then understand that everything not on that list is a default no unless it makes an overwhelming case. And learn one sentence. Practice it until it's automatic. I'd love to, but I can't commit to that right now. That's it. No essay. No justification. The over-explaining is what gets you trapped. Every reason you give is a door someone can argue through. A no with no reasons attached has nowhere to be pushed. You'll feel guilty the first few times. Notice something though, the guilt fades in about an hour. The resentment from a yes you didn't mean lasts for weeks. The people who never break this rule are often described as protective of their time, sometimes as difficult. What they actually are is honest. They stopped pretending they could do everything, and that admission bought them the ability to do something. But saying no creates a new problem. Space. And space is where most people get uncomfortable, because it forces a question they've been avoiding with busyness. 5. They stay a student long after they're allowed to stop. There's a specific moment in a person's life that determines almost everything that follows, and almost nobody notices it happening. It's the moment you get good enough to stop learning. You reach competence. You can do the job. You know the routine. Nobody's correcting you anymore. And in that moment there's a fork. You either stay curious, or you start defending what you already know. Most people take the second path, and here's why it's so hard to resist. Being a beginner is humiliating. When you were learning, you were bad at it publicly, and that was acceptable because you were new. But once you're the experienced one, being bad at something in front of people costs you status. So you stop putting yourself in positions where you might be bad. And the moment you do that, you begin a slow decline you won't perceive for a decade. I've watched this happen to genuinely gifted people. Not dramatically. They just quietly stopped absorbing anything new around 35. The world kept moving and they kept explaining why the old way was better. And they were sometimes right, which made it worse, because being occasionally right made it easy to never check. Here's what the people who don't decline actually do, and it's less impressive than you'd think. They read things that make them uncomfortable. Not things that confirm what they believe, things that argue against it. They put 1 hour a week into something they're currently bad at. They ask questions in rooms where they're supposed to be the expert. Do this today. Identify one thing you've been quietly avoiding because you'd be bad at it. Not something enormous. Something you've dodged because you don't want to be the beginner. Spend 20 minutes on it. Badly. On purpose. Notice how it feels. That discomfort you're feeling, that's the exact sensation of growth. You've just forgotten it, because you've spent years arranging your life to avoid it. Here's the refrain that changes everything. Failure becomes feedback. Confusion becomes curiosity. Not knowing becomes the beginning instead of the end. And when that shift happens, you become almost impossible to stop. Because everyone else is protecting a position, and you're building one. But learning requires something most people can't give. It requires time to compound. And that's rule 6, the one that separates people more completely than any of the others. 6. They think in years while everyone else thinks in weeks. Here's why you quit things. You start something on a Monday. You do it well for 11 days. And on day 12 you look in the mirror, or check your bank account, or read what you wrote, and there's no visible change. So the voice arrives. This isn't working. That voice is not wrong about the evidence. It's wrong about the time frame. Everything worth having has a delay built into it. And the delay is not a flaw. The delay is what keeps most people out. If the results were immediate, everyone would have them, and they'd be worth nothing. Here's the shape almost nothing prepares you for. Progress is not a line. It's a long flat stretch that looks exactly like failure, followed by a sudden vertical climb that looks like luck to everyone watching. The flat stretch is not nothing happening. The flat stretch is everything happening underground, connections forming, reps accumulating, small competencies stacking into something you can't see yet. But it feels like nothing, and feeling like nothing is what makes people quit at month 4 of a 12-month process. Return to the land for a moment. You plant in spring and for weeks the ground looks empty. Nothing. Bare dirt. And if you didn't understand what was happening below the surface, you'd conclude you'd wasted your seed and dig it all up to check. That's what quitting is. Digging up the seed to see if it's growing. So here's the practical move, and it's the single most useful thing in this entire script. Stop measuring outcomes. Start measuring inputs. You cannot control whether you lose weight this month. You can control whether you move today. You cannot control whether the business succeeds this quarter. You can control whether you made the calls. Outcomes are on a delay you don't set. Inputs are available immediately. Today, pick your one thing and define what a successful day looks like as an action, not a result. Then track only that. A simple mark on a calendar, not a number on a scale. A mark that says, I did the thing. Do that for 90 days without checking the outcome. 90 days. Not because 90 is magic, but because it's long enough for the underground work to surface. The people who never break this rule aren't more patient than you. They've just been through the flat stretch before, and they know what it is. They've felt that specific despair at week 7 and they recognize it as a stage rather than a verdict. And that recognition is worth more than talent. Which leaves one rule, and it's the one that holds the other 6 together, because without it, all of them eventually collapse. 7. They take full responsibility, even when it isn't fair. I want to be careful here, because this rule is easy to say badly. I'm not telling you everything is your fault. Things happen to people. Real unfairness exists. You were born where you were born, given what you were given, and some people started 50 yards ahead of you. That's not a motivational fiction to be argued away. It's true. But here's the distinction that changes lives, and it's sharper than most people realize. Fault is about the past. Responsibility is about the future. You can be entirely blameless for your situation and still be the only person who can change it. Those two things sit together comfortably, even though every instinct in you wants to pick one. The reason this matters so much is that blame is a comfortable place to live. It's warm in there. In blame, you're right and being right feels good. But blame has one property that makes it lethal. It puts the steering wheel in someone else's hands. If your circumstances are responsible for your life, then your life doesn't change until your circumstances do. And you don't control those, so you wait. I've watched people wait for years, correct the whole time, and stuck the whole time. Most people fail at this rule not through laziness but through fairness. They feel, legitimately, that they shouldn't have to be the one to fix it. And they're often right. But being right and being stuck are entirely compatible states, and the universe has no mechanism for noticing that you deserved better. So here's the move. Take one situation in your life you've been explaining rather than changing. You know which one. It's the one where you have a well-rehearsed paragraph about why it is the way it is. Now ask a single question, and be careful how you phrase it. Not, whose fault is this? You've answered that 100 times. Ask instead, what is the one thing within my control that I have not tried? There's always something. It may be small, it may not be sufficient, but there is always at least one lever you haven't pulled, and you know what it is, because avoiding it is what the explanation was for. Pull it today, not because it's fair, because you're the only one in the position to. Music. Now here's the thing I've been building toward, and I want you to hear it clearly, because it's the piece that makes all 7 of these make sense. None of these rules are about success. Every one of them is about a single underlying thing: reducing the distance between who you say you are and who you actually are. That's it. That's the whole game. The broken promise, the endless negotiating, the scattered attention, the yes you didn't mean, the learning you stopped, the quitting at week 7, the explanation instead of the action. Every one of those is a gap between your stated self and your actual self. And here's what nobody tells you about that gap. It's where all the exhaustion comes from, not the work. The gap. Carrying around a version of yourself you keep failing to be is the heaviest thing a human can do. And most people do it every day for decades and call it life. Close the gap and something remarkable happens. Effort stops feeling like effort. Because you're no longer fighting yourself, you're just being yourself, and being yourself was never supposed to be hard. The people who look like they have it easy don't have less resistance. They have less internal contradiction. That's the whole difference. So let me give it to you fast. Keep your word to yourself, because self-trust is the currency everything else is bought with. Decide once, so your energy goes into living instead of arguing. Guard your attention, because that's where your actual life takes place. Say no with a clean conscience, because your yes was already spoken for. Stay a beginner on purpose, because comfort is where decline begins. Think in years, because the flat stretch is not failure, it's construction. And take responsibility even when it isn't fair, because fair and stuck can live together forever. Now here's your one instruction, and I only want one thing from you today. Pick the rule you resisted most while listening. Not the one that inspired you, the one that made you slightly uncomfortable, the one where you found yourself thinking, yeah, but that resistance is a signal. It means you already know the answer and have been avoiding it. Take that one rule. Take the smallest possible action inside it. Today, before this day ends. That's all. One rule, one action. Today. Because here's what I want you to understand about that plot of land. Nobody is coming to plant it. There's no season where it takes care of itself. 5 years from now something will be growing there. That part isn't optional. The only thing you get to decide is whether you chose it. Your future isn't waiting to happen to you. It's being written right now, in the small decisions you're making while you listen to this, and it will look exactly like the sum of your ordinary days. So make today one you'd be willing to repeat, because you will.